Hello and welcome back to the Employee Advocacy and Influence Podcast. I'm your host, Lewis Gray. I'm a Senior Marketing Manager here at Disseminate, and today I was joined by Elliot Elsley, who returns on co-hosting duties. Our special guest for this episode is Sam Moles, who's a digital and personal brand specialist and employee ownership advisor over at Stephens Scown, which is a leading law firm here in the UK. Now, law might not be the first industry you think of when it comes to social media innovation, but Stephens Scown has been consistently ranked as one of the top firms globally for employee advocacy. And Sam's been right at the heart of that journey for years now. We covered loads in our chat, but there were a few things that really stood out to me and I think you'll want to stick around for. So firstly, how they built advocacy into the culture of a very traditional industry. Sam explained why trust, patience, and proof points were key to getting more senior lawyers on board. Then, secondly, the balance between confidence and competence. So, Sam explained that it's not just about knowing the law, it's about having the confidence to share it online in an authentic way, even when the fear of getting it wrong is reasonably high. And finally, we dug into AI and specifically how Stephens Scown is using it responsibly to save time without losing that all-important human voice. Because if we're being frank, people can spot AI content a mile off at this point. And I'm sure that won't be the case forever. I'm sure it will get much more sophisticated. But before we get into this chat, a quick shameless plug. If you're serious about employee advocacy in your business, you need to check out the world's biggest employee advocacy study. We released this maybe 3 weeks ago, and it's the result of analysing over 500,000 LinkedIn posts from employees. It's packed with insights from across industries, so things like what formats perform best on social media when you're providing employees with posts to share, why authenticity always wins and why employees should be encouraged to write their own posts and the data behind that, and how you can 3x your LinkedIn engagement with one simple tactic. I'm not giving away any spoilers for now, but you'll find a link in the show notes. Without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Sam. Right. First and foremost, Sam, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. Do you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your role?
Thanks, Lynn. I'm really excited to be here today. Yeah, so I work for a law firm called Stephens Scown. I've been with them now for almost 8 years. And so I've held a couple of different positions in my time there. But where listeners find me now is with two hats on, mostly. I'm the digital and personal brand specialist, and I'm also an employee ownership advisor. And I'm here today because Stephens Scown, I would say we're really fortunate. We are really fortunate, but there was hard work that went into it. We're fortunate to feature on the latest Disseminate top 10 for law firms globally, I think is probably about the right way of framing it.
Yeah, so for anybody that's unfamiliar, we have these leaderboards that essentially showcase by industry the companies whose employees are particularly active on LinkedIn, and then we'll rank them in order of how many or what percentage of their employees are active. And Stephens Scown has consistently been up there. What was quite funny was when I reached out to you, Sam, I realised I'd messaged you about 5 years ago or exactly 5 years ago to that date, I remember, to congratulate you on the your placement in the leaderboard then, and it's just been consistent ever since. So very excited to speak to you today. I feel like it's a long time in the making, but I'm going to go right back, as I do with all of our guests when we start these episodes, and I like to just understand what it was that kind of sparked the idea for advocacy within any organisation. So with Stephens Scown, what was it that initially sparked the need to bring employee voices into the spotlight?
Great question. So the initial emphasis really was kind of a combination of factors. The biggest one being the pandemic. So 5 years ago, a little bit more than 5 years ago, actually, our industry went through an enormous change because law is very traditional, and some of the ways of generating new business and serving clients have evolved, but maybe remained more traditional, i.e. it's a lot of face-to-face interaction and it's a lot of in-person business development. And obviously that changed because no one could do that anymore. And so, things changed literally overnight for us. The things that we knew how to do well and we've been refining for a long time as an industry, as a business, had to change. So all of a sudden, digital, whatever it meant at that time, digital marketing and delivering marketing, business development, client services, it all became absolutely essential. And it was in that time where we'd be asking questions of, well, usually I'd meet someone at this event and I'd get to know them better and I might generate some work, or they might become a contact and a referrer. The questions are asked, how do I do that now if I can't actually meet them? Where are the digital spaces I go? How do we, rather than delivering a seminar, how do we deliver a digital webinar? So that was kind of the unplanned knee-jerk reaction of, oh, we need to do something to continue surviving in this space, which tied in well with a direction that we were already moving in, which is kind of this understanding that consumers are always getting smarter, and they're probably aware that the firm LinkedIn account, if I take LinkedIn as an example, people are aware that it's a marketing team that runs that. It's not actually the legal advisor who they use to support them in their personal business life that's running that account. So I think consumers are smart enough to know that actually when a brand is sharing a message from a brand-owned channel, they might be interested in it if they have loyalty to that brand, but it is coming from a marketing team. It's not coming from the trusted advisor they have. So being cognizant to the way that consumers were becoming smarter, we also recognized that we needed to change how we utilize the personal brands of our brilliant legal advisors. And a message that I still parrot to this day is that just two of our colleagues in the employment team, two very senior people in that team, have a combined following on LinkedIn that is more than our firm account. And I'm fairly pleased with the growth of the firm account, but it goes to show that if we've got just two people in one area of law that can outreach the whole firm account, what else do we have untapped in a business of almost 400 people now? So yeah, it was that combination of, well, we have to do something to change, but also we're cognizant of the fact that trends and consumer behaviour is changing.
I think that last point is such a light bulb moment that so many people go through with this, when they suddenly realize, oh wait, the corporate account's got 100,000 followers, something like that for a lot of these businesses, and then they go, oh, but if we just have 10, 50 people through sharing content, it's massively more than that. And it just takes somebody to see that more often than not. I don't know whether you found this yourself, but like once that resonates with a senior leader, with an executive in the business, they suddenly kind of click onto, oh, I understand why we're doing this now. This suddenly makes a lot of sense. But until you've put it into practice, it's almost hard to kind of show them that possibility, and particularly in the industry that you're in as well, from a law perspective. And I see this with like a lot of professional services businesses as well. You've got experts in a field, in an industry, in a particular practice that they have. That's actually quite hard to convey over a corporate social media account. It's hard to kind of be that niche and go, I think back to some of the clients that we work with, and somebody that stands out is somebody that was an aviation expert, big consultant. That's what they did. And that's the only thing they spoke about. Now, the company can't go and post about really niche aviation law and changes and things like that, but that person can, and he becomes the kind of go-to member from that perspective, and everybody is following that person for that information. It helps you kind of target those niches in a much easier and much more kind of like normal way, rather than trying to kind of sporadically fire stuff out on a corporate page that's only going to meet a very small kind of subset of those followers. I think it is just remarkable how quickly that shift happens once people start to realize how easy it is essentially to do.
Absolutely. It's also very operationally inefficient for a corporate account to know everything, right? I operate in a very heavily regulated for a reason industry. There's no way that I'm going to try and explain the law. We have people who are very experienced who do that. And so actually it just doesn't make sense to try and make everything from the firm account as accurate or as effective as it can be when we have the people who can do it themselves directly. If we give them, I often refer to it as the confidence and the competence. It's kind of that dual balance for me in making sure that actually they are confident to use the technology, because they are confident to apply the law. But applying the law is very different to actually sharing content on social media. And that's actually quite a big barrier to overcome with law, because for someone who's qualified in law, they've probably done like 6 years of 1 degree and then a qualification, and then they've been a paralegal, and then they've been a trainee solicitor, and now they're a solicitor. It's like 6-7 years to get to that point where you can actually say, I'm a lawyer. And what it means is that there's the confidence piece of, I don't want to mess it up because I've spent a long time to get here and I don't want to ruin what I've done. But also there's someone that's done 5 times my 7 years out there. There's someone who's a partner who's been in law for 35 years. What if I say something that they contest with? And quite often the law is about one side being right and the other side being wrong. So they're kind of bred to have that mindset, and it can be self-inhibiting when it comes to something like LinkedIn. So it is about conveying to them that actually, you know what you're talking about. This isn't contentious. And actually, if everything's focused on value added to someone, why do they need to know this? It's much more helpful. And then the competence piece is actually LinkedIn or any other social media sites just might not be something that they've been brought up on. And so actually a lot of the barriers to access are, how do I share an insight? Do I have to use a piece of media? What's a hashtag? Do I @mention? And all those sort of pieces for people who operate in this space that you just have drilled into you. And I remember one of the old LinkedIn algorithm updates that came out, and it's, the first 8 hours gets you the next 24 hours, and the first 24 hours gets you the next 48 hours, and you have to like something within X amount of time, and so on and so forth. Those sort of pieces where we just know how to maximize our time, those pieces aren't trained in without some sort of training to people. And so that can often be quite a big barrier to access, which we spent a lot of time trying to get over.
Yeah, and I think that's the traditionalism of the industry, right? Generally speaking, those that you're going to try and kind of onboard into kind of an advocacy program in some way or shape or form, probably on the slightly older side, less the polite way I tend to put it is not digital natives is a nice
Sure.
phrase I tend to use. But having those and trying to onboard those, that is the trickier part. I think back to 8 years ago when I first joined Disseminate, we used to have conversations with senior leaders and they go, well, we don't want people spending all day on social media at work. That would be an objection that we would have to kind of handle at points.
Yep.
The shift is much better now. People understand the value of this, but it still takes a little bit of ad hoc, a little bit of some sort of sentiment, some way just to prove to people, hey, this does work. And to your point, for partners, solicitors that are bringing in their own business, you just have to highlight, like, hey, this is how you're going to be able to do that. This is like going to an event, but every day.
Yeah, what's actually really interesting is that senior leaders have a naturally stronger personal brand. They know more people. They're in more PR. People write more articles about them. They're featured in legal guides. But they're the least digital native. So you maybe have a greater hurdle in onboarding them into a system because they'll go, I'm successful. Why would I do this? And it's like, well, 15 minutes of your time might equal 4 hours of someone's junior's time because you've naturally got a following. Conversely, the juniors who are digital natives who've been brought up in the technology, they have those barriers to access of confidence. But there's also this sliding scale where the seniors will go, well, the junior knows how to do it, so they can do it. And the juniors go, but I'm fearful, I guess, for lack of a term, of failing. So they're going, well, why can't the senior leaders do it? Because they're far more effective. So there's this kind of fun balance to be had that they're always trying to overcome and make things easier for people. So what I often tell our legal teams in team meetings is I'm very, I don't want to use the term emotional awareness, but I'm very emotionally aware that you are very busy people and you are helping our clients with the things that are most important to them in their life. If it's their family, if it's their business, if it's their property, you have a very busy job. And you have 3 priorities. You have to deliver client work. That's how we operate as a business. You've then got to generate new clients. That's how we continue to operate as a business. And you've got to bill those clients for the work we've done. That's how we get the money in that keeps us going as a business. And I often use the analogy that everything else just sits in a puddle on the floor, this like murky grey puddle of compliance training and business development and marketing and culture and everything else. But actually, as soon as I can try and convince you that by utilizing your personal brand, spending time in this space, looking at business development, you're actually reinforcing those top 2 pieces. Because actually, there's no reason why you can't share expertise and help a client, even if indirectly. And then that is strengthening your personal brand, which means you're more likely to generate new work. So it's about trying to understand where people are coming from with I don't have 15 minutes a day, make things easier in their world, but also then re-emphasize to them that actually investment in this over time pays off over time.
I definitely want to come back onto the senior leadership thing because I think, well, just for the question I'm about to ask, I think that can be a whole different beast for some of the reasons you've actually just mentioned. But I don't want to just throw everybody else into a separate bucket, but for the sake of everybody else, what's your approach for guiding people through their first steps on LinkedIn? So, for those who maybe aren't digital natives, or even just those who maybe are, but, haven't posted before, how do you help them through that process?
LinkedIn, like 5 or so years ago, you used to be able to get an all-star tag, I think it was called, or something. And that was, you put in your title, you had a picture, add a banner, put in some information, each of the sections, add an interest. And LinkedIn would give you this little ribbon that would sit at the top of your profile. And it might have said all-star, I think it was gold. And at some point they've sacked it off. But that was really quite helpful as a visual indicator of, you've got to the point now where if someone searches for you, you're displaying the version of yourself that you want. So it started off with this is how you get to an all-star profile. And then we've kind of, over a number of years, we've onboarded every team through this kind of process to the point where now the majority of our colleagues get it. But when new people join, we kind of embed them in these standard processes. So we run like a half an hour one-off with certain teams to get people up to the minimum level. But thankfully, as a business, we're past the minimum. Team leaders buy into it now. They don't go, you can't be on LinkedIn today. That's a waste of your time. People are very cognizant of the fact that actually there's an audience out there. We can develop our personal brands. And so the support we have now exists in a couple of different mechanisms. We run a 30-minute drop-in once a month, which is with me and my digital colleagues, which is ask us what you want, but we also pre-format some questions, which kind of re-embeds some of the good knowledge. We have what we call a LinkedIn Champions mail group. So every week, we just send out to our colleagues that are on the Champions group the title of the content and link to it, because lawyers are busy, and if we can put into their world a piece of content that's just a click away, they're far more likely to engage with it than if they go, I'll just snooze that reminder that comes up every Thursday for 15 minutes to do LinkedIn. And so we put that straight in their world. And what we're starting to do now, beyond that kind of standard support, is move towards this more personal brand-based approach, which for me is a much loftier version, because I feel we've got to the point now where it's not carrot or stick for getting people to use LinkedIn. A lot of businesses probably have the challenge of going, we need you to be on LinkedIn because, and the person will go, well, that sounds like it's benefiting you. What do I get from this? We've done enough work, as I've said, with those 3 priorities to make people understand that it benefits them, even if it's still a capacity challenge. The personal brand bit is all about moving all the way towards kind of who are you as a human? Where are you now? And how are you seen? And actually, are you seen the way that you actually are? Or are some of these mechanisms for your personal brand pulling you down? And then where do you want to be? And how do you get there? And it's quite a self-reflective exercise, because if you ask someone, and the example I use is, tell me what this insert important stakeholder thinks of you if you're not in the room. And it's not a question that people tend to ask themselves, because we don't tend to like being super self-reflective. But as soon as I'm in a room with someone and I ask them to do that, and they choose a specific person, specific client, or someone in the organization, you go, okay, what does that person think of you? Like, be honest. Because we're British, the first one's always something negative, and the other 2 are positives, but with room for improvement. And so then we have a starting point and we go, okay, well, how do you want to be seen? And that journey is tied to, well, actually, this is what I want from my time at work. This is what I want from my career. And once someone has this filter, I kind of call it, and I like to get down to like a 3-point thing. I'm ABC and I want to be DEF. When someone comes into work, they apply that filter like an armor or like a suit, and they go into every situation. They go, I have a tendency to be these things because my natural characteristics are that, but actually I need me to be the best version of them. And so I'm going to go in with the cognizance of trying to act more like that. And that expands to everything they do for marketing, business development, in-office interactions. But it gets them the buy-in, because there is only so much carrot and stick you can apply that changes someone's behavior. To change someone's behavior, to have them self-regulate it, you need to change the belief. And if you help them to discover the belief they have of achieving this other thing, when it comes to them and their Thursday PM 15-minute LinkedIn reminder, they don't snooze it, because if they snooze it, they know they're doing themselves a disservice. And that's where you start to move away from like a business or corporate mandated, you must do this because we want it, to actually this self-ownership piece, which we're on the journey to, I hope, at a large scale.
I was just going to ask from a perspective of talking about the kind of culture within the business. It sounds like you've reached that point where it's almost self-perpetuating within the business, where when somebody joins, I presume it's almost inherent now within the business that, hey, social media is something that we use, that we massively kind of dive into. Do you find that's made training, like in the more near term, like just much easier for people just kind of pile into this without as much pushback?
Yeah, that's a really good question and a good observation to make. Culture is a very interesting thing, isn't it? Because oftentimes there's no way to define it or reinforce it. It's just you come in and you see the way that people are acting and you just absorb it. So yeah, I like to think that we've done enough work that people are then self-perpetuating the expectation that, well, it's not the expectation because there's no demand. We don't go around saying you have to be on here. In fact, if we did that, we'd probably have less engagement. But there's an expectation that when people join, that they have this opportunity that we support them to leverage. And this probably, if we're talking about culture, it starts to lead into who we are as a business. So we are employee owned, we are B Corp, we're a Times Best Places to Work in 2025. So those are kind of the badges, I guess, that demonstrate that we've got a good culture. We've not just got them because they're nice shiny badges, but I think they are good proof points. But the employee ownership one for me is the one that probably most aligns with this. The idea with employee ownership is that employees are owners of the business, and therefore they have a greater share in the outcome of the business. They are sharing the rewards of the success. Therefore, it should motivate and encourage them more to see the bigger picture. If I'm putting my EO hat on, most business tends to be employees fulfill a function, and we'd just like to keep an employee to that function. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but people, I believe everybody has loads more to offer than just what their role description says. And actually, the more we can do to unlock that, the more empowered people are, and the business is going to benefit from that innovation. And I think the employee advocacy and the personal brand piece tie into that. We've said to people, you're part of this business. We've proved it. We've said there's an opportunity here for you to benefit you and to benefit the business, and then you benefit from that. So it's probably that kind of that circular, I say circular economy, but that's not the right phrase. That kind of the circularity of it, where it reinforces and supports itself.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head as well. And it's something that I talk about often with clients and prospects around, who to onboard, how to onboard people. The people with a vested interest in the business in some way, shape, or form, and a vested interest in the value that the outcomes that come from a lot of this are just the best people. And the fact that it's kind of, an ownership-based business from that perspective, everybody has some sort of vested interest in doing this because it has a sort of knock-on outcome. It's the same in different businesses with a sales team, with commercial teams, with directors, with people that get bonuses based on performance. Those are the people that have a vested interest in like the value of all of this, and that can perpetuate across the business over time. But they're a really great place to start from that side of things.
I think just one example I think I kind of feel that is when I do onboarding training. My team does it. One of the questions that a lot of people say or preempts me is connections. Who do I connect with? And we always do the it's got to be valuable both ways, etc., etc. But I always advise all of my colleagues that they should be connecting with all of their colleagues. And some other people go, why would I connect with my colleagues? It just seems like a foreign concept to them that they'd be connected with their peer group. And I explain to them, or the ones that come in with that notion, it's that almost all of our areas of law where we can help people intersect with another area. So if you're an intellectual property solicitor, actually being connected with one of our property developers and able to promote their content is actually a helpful thing for your clients, because almost no service that someone uses in law exists in isolation. If you're a business owner and something's happening with your family, you'll have multiple needs of support. So actually, if you're connected to all of your peers and you're able to engage with their insights, you're just able to add more value to your specific clients at the end of the day. And that we have everyone connect to everyone, that we encourage everyone to connect. And it's not, why would I do that for people who are already at the firm? I think that's probably one of those indicators of a less selfish attitude and more of a shared vested interest, as you said.
Yeah, and I think it's such a simple concept, right, for a lot of people. Well, you're going to be front of mind. So if you're connected with somebody that's needs property like work and sort of from a legal perspective, and they do just happen to own a business at the same time, you're going to be the first person they think of when they think, oh, I need a lawyer for something, or I wonder if they deal with that. And if that's then furthered by the fact that, oh, I'm sure I saw them talk about, business ownership or something along those lines on LinkedIn, or liked somebody, I can't remember. I'm just going to go and ask them. You're first person that they think of when that happens, rather than let me go do a Google search, or in these days a chat GPT search for who to talk to. It becomes, just a much simpler process, because we'd all, generally speaking, rather deal with somebody we've dealt with before, because dealing with new people is often aggro in most cases. So knowing what you're working with is better.
It's interesting that you've referenced ChatGPT there, because that is another one of those big changes to every industry, but our industry too, because what our lawyers say has to be accurate. It can't be filled with hallucinations. So we've had to, as I'm sure lots of law firms have, walk a tightrope with what we can use AI for, and what other changes that sort of automation is going to bring to the industry. Now, I've seen peers in other law firms using it, and you can tell so easily the M dashes, the emojis, the overly nice sentiment when you know that person isn't capable of stringing those words together. So one of the things that we have to be cautious of as an industry, and I'm hopeful that our people buy into the advice and the influence that I have, is we need to retain the you in these personal brand pieces. And in fact, actually, the authenticity is only going to ever become more valuable. If we're seeing a dilution of authenticity, you're going to stand out more if you are authentic, but also you risk damaging your personal brand. If someone who works in your industry or is a business owner or any of our target clients is cognizant to the hallmarks of AI, and they start seeing that, like, overnight your tone has changed or your structure. You used to go from an image and a 3-line and 1 emoji to 3,000 characters, 9 emojis, all of these hashtags at the bottom that don't make any sense. That's actually really damaging to someone's potential personal brand. So yeah, we're in the midst of another great changing period. We can't not use automation, but we have to use it in the right ways. And being able to manage that balance is really important for us, both to not lose clients, but also stand above our peers as well.
Sam, if you don't mind me asking, is this something that you've had to police now that it's obviously, so many people have access to LLMs now, so many people are experimenting with it and putting out what they think is, high grade content. But as you've just described, as somebody using it day in, day out, you can see Chat GPT, sorry to always use Chat GPT, but you can see that content a mile off. Is it something you've had to maybe police and kind of drop people the odd message here and there, or are you just addressing it in the training sessions?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we've got a really great privacy team at the firm, and we have an intellectual property and data protection team. So we have to be hotter on this than some other businesses do, because we're very capable of marking our own homework and knowing where the right and wrong is. So we have got a really robust AI policy that came out, and that's been with let's start very small and let's find out whether the margin of acceptable use is. So we quite quickly got in with a don't do this, do this. And we've slowly loosened the reins as we've figured out more what is right and wrong. There have obviously been instances where people have used it incorrectly, and I myself have used it in the wrong context before. And it's about holding your hands up and acknowledging that these things are new technologies. But where we have seen, and we've produced guidance, so for me, the biggest red flag when this launched was we've got really good writers at the team and across the firm. So we have loads of article content, which is really valuable because people have specific jargon-filled questions for law, and we can answer them. But if we were to cede control of content over to AI, that's obviously very bad for the business. Some firms have been delisted because their content is so overwhelmingly AI. We'd have never got to that point. But where I've seen articles where someone knows someone's tone of voice written, you see that change. It's about going, oh, this is not your usual template. Let me know how you've got there. Oh, you've done it that way. Okay, well, here's why that's not quite right. Here's the really worrying end of the scale, which you're not near, but here's how you use it in the right way. Let me give you some guidance. Let me shepherd you towards the correct way. And also because lawyers are very cognizant of this, you're either right and wrong, and actually we want to always be right. We've got that natural kind of inbuilt risk monitor to know where something is new and scary potentially, and not going crazily overboard without knowing the implications. And we've then finally tried to implement some systems where the digital team are in control of the AI so that we can drive the efficiencies via it, but it's handed over to the people who are more comfortable to use it. So we're trying to get out the efficiency of using AI, and actually in some spaces the creativity, but then ensuring that what goes up is authentically human, and mostly the AI systems, if we talk about ChatGPT, it's used for what we're comfortable for it to be used for, speeding things up, making people's lives easier, putting things into people's world because they're time poor, just making sure that what goes up isn't anything to do with AI, and that everything people are sharing is authentic.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great to hear as well that there's an AI policy in place. And I know that sounds really silly, but there is an alarming number of organizations that, not necessarily I've spoken to on the podcast, just in general, but that I know don't have AI policies in place. And it's just, it does still kind of feel like the wild, wild west in that regard. So it's great to hear, as with employee advocacy, you guys are ahead of the curve there. Sam, I'm going to take it way back for a second because we spoke a little bit earlier about engaging senior leaders. And when we initially spoke, you described them brilliantly as rainmakers because they have the potential to generate so much impact from LinkedIn. When it comes to engaging them, obviously you mentioned about the fact you can communicate that to them, but what tactics have you found most effective for engaging them and getting them active on LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The tactic that I found to be, well, it's probably a combination of two tactics that makes it most effective. One, it is very much a knowledge sharing experience. So legal advisors are experts in law, and I wouldn't dare to talk about the law to any legal advisor. I'm just not going to go there. What that means is that I know nothing about the law because I'm not supposed to. Conversely, some of our senior leaders or senior rainmakers aren't expected to know anything about how all of this works. So one big piece of it is breaking down barriers. And because legal advisors have this natural inbuilt, I'm either right or wrong, it's about opening up conversations to say, you might not know this, here's why it matters. So a big piece over a number of years has been that I'm going to let you trust me. I'm going to tell you the right way of doing things. I'm going to tell you why something's the wrong way of things, and we'll kind of go there. And that's in combination with what we've also found most effective with engaging those people is putting something almost directly on their screen for them. So ensuring that they remain authentic when they post something, but it's about like pulling through the busyness of their world, where the most valuable thing they can do is traditionally opening physical doors. It's about trying to get into the space where they can open digital doors. And this is where AI has been quite effective because at the moment we're opening a permanent office in Taunton, probably a week after this podcast goes live. And we're expanding all the way to Dorset and opening an office in Bournemouth before the end of the year. So the people we have in those places have a really strong personal brand, but are we utilising it enough in a digital space where people might actually be searching for careers because we want to get new people in, and searching for new service providers where we don't have strong brand awareness. So they're really valuable, and trying to get them online is really important. And so one of the things we've been using AI to do is to come up with variations of content, but not making them post any of them. We say, here's how you can start it. Change this to be your own tone of voice, because obviously if we give 10 people the same message and they go out, that's going to look disastrous. They're going to look like they've copied and pasted each other. And if people are connected with each other, they see one coming from the other, it's not going to be very effective. So one of the things we tried to do is put into their world, this is what I'd say. This is my tone of voice, or this is an AI version of it. But what would you say? Because I often use this analogy. I love an analogy as well. The other analogy I use is that we're inundated with choice in the modern world, and it's like a subscription to Netflix or Amazon. Netflix has got good algorithms. Amazon is terrible, and Disney Plus is confusing and slow. But when you log into any one of these things and you think, I've got 90 minutes, what do I want to watch? there's too much choice. You're baffled by choice. Do I watch something that I know I love, that I want to take a chance on? Do I start a new series? I'm just going to scroll for 15 minutes and now I've run out of time and I'm bored and I hate the choice that I've got. It's almost the same thing when you say to someone, oh, develop your personal brand on LinkedIn. Shout out about this new newsletter we've got. They just go, oh, well, there's loads of content. Which one do I share? Which one's most accurate? And I've chosen one. That took 10 minutes. What do I say now? I could say anything. I could talk about our USPs. I could talk about my experience. I could talk about my colleagues. So actually just removing the option of choice in a sense and going, post this because it matches your personal brand or your team strategy. Say this because it's our USP and I know you, and do it at this time because I know you're busy. They go, oh yeah, okay, wicked. Oh, I just need to change those words. That is something that we're trying to ramp up a bit more, but we found quite helpful with our current objective of trying to grow our Taunton presence.
I guess to go backwards, if you ask somebody, hey, what would you like to write? They go, oh, I don't know, there's so many options. If you say, I think you should write this, and this is what I've given you, they'll immediately critique it. And that's a good thing because it just makes it easy and you get the thing that you want in the first place, which is their tone of voice in the post. But giving somebody something, they'll go, well, no, I wouldn't say it like that. Actually, I'd rather use this word. And you go, great, that's all I needed you to do. On to the next. And it's a very, very simple flip of the same thing, which is I'd like you to write in your own personal voice. And just by giving somebody something and saying, this is what I think you should do, most people's pushback will go, well, no, I want something slightly different to that because I'm different.
I think for those people out there looking at their employee advocacy, if you try and do too much too soon and you haven't built up the influence and the trust, it's always going to be really hard, especially in an industry where you have people who are absolute experts in their area, have had to do a lot of training to get to that point. They've got a high threshold for their trust because what they're doing requires ultimate trust and expertise. So they look for that in their peers as well. So it almost for us had to be here's this little golden badge that you can get. Let's start there to build up to this point where you could say, oh, hi, we're going to use AI today to create some draft messages that I need you to use. Because otherwise, if they've got this high risk averseness, it's going to be, whoa, well, let's take a step back a step. Why are we using LinkedIn? I don't want to be on there. I'm going to delete it. So yeah, I think for other people looking at their programs, that trust and influence is really important.
I think that's a fantastic place to finish, to be honest with you, Sam. We actually spoke about that on our most recent episode of the podcast. We were basically showcasing our new study, which I'll probably plug at some point during this recording. But one of the huge takeaways from that was just the unprecedented need for authenticity, trust, both internally and externally for advocacy success. Sam, I probably should have given you some time to prep for this one, but I'm going to ask it regardless because I'm curious to know. Off the top of your head, what's been the biggest win that you've seen from employee advocacy?
I hate trying to come down to one thing.
This is the options thing again, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. If you gave me, because my mind goes into two places. My mind goes to where colleagues in the pandemic shifted their focus to LinkedIn and won clients through it. Because what you would say is that through LinkedIn, you can't win clients. It's great for some things. It's great for brand awareness, yada, yada, yada. But people would say, I could never win a client on LinkedIn. But we have lots of examples of people winning clients directly on LinkedIn. They did things like cementing their personal brand, connecting with businesses, and then they'd write an article or someone would share a newsletter and they'd reach directly in to the messaging function of someone they knew was warm and go, hey, this employment law is changing, or in the pandemic it was furlough. Hey, furlough's changing. This is going to impact you. Love you to speak to me or my colleague. Those actions are enormous because that is the ultimate goal of anything we do, is to secure new clients and generate new matters and fees. So the examples where what is often thought of as really high level funnel activity converting direct is obviously the biggest win. But the ones that probably, because I'm a bit of a softie, touch me more is when you think of some of our less than digital natives, some of the people who would be really firm backed and go, well, I've always won work this way. I don't know, I'm putting on a voice of an older bloke, but that kind of example that you might think of in your head, who's really stalwart, I've always done it this way, I'm going to do it that way. Them actually wanting a private word and saying, I need help with this, can you help me? And then seeing them actually put in time in that's probably more sentimentally more effective. And I won't say their names, but I can think of them in my head, the ones that have been really open and gone like, I don't get this. I wasn't born and wasn't raised with this. Some of this stuff is confusing and scary, but I need your help. That's the pieces that for me. And then when you see them sharing stuff in their very unique and authentic way, you're like, oh, yeah, that potentially is a bigger win, because it's maybe a harder cultural, culture, if that's the right word, generational change that we've gone over. So yeah, it would be one of those two things, and I'd probably lean towards the one that's the soppier side of me.
No, that's brilliant. I think, to be honest with you, they probably feed into each other as well, right? Because if you see, if somebody's won business through LinkedIn, it's only going to create, or I guess emphasize that culture of sharing and increase the awareness of this. I don't know whether you want to call it initiative, program, but increase people's familiarity with LinkedIn and want to do it, I suppose. Genuinely, thank you. This has been absolutely amazing. I think there's plenty of actionable takeaways in here for our listeners. Any resources that we can possibly drop into the show notes, we will. But Sam, thank you so much for joining us, honestly. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me as well. Thanks for your time, Lewis. Thanks, Elliot.
Take care.